In the 4th year after our marriage, Augustine kept a young female college student as his mistress. She was cheerful, beautiful, and full of energy. She dragged Augustine, a billionaire, to eat street food and chase after her favorite esports player. Augustine called me. "I won't be coming home tonight. I'm here to watch Ryan's match." The girl beside him sneered. "That boring old woman. Does she even know who Ryan is?" They didn't know. After hanging up the phone, I was pinned inside a dimly lit car by Ryan. His canine teeth lightly grazed the back of my neck, causing a slight sting. "Clara, I won the match. How are you going to reward me tonight?" Chapter 01. The first time I met Julia was on my 26th birthday. I was still smiling and chatting with the guests at the banquet. "There's some business at the company. Augustine will be home a bit later, but the gift has already been sent in advance." Before I could finish speaking, Augustine brought someone in right in front of me. Julia was wearing a bright red dress, clinging to Augustine's arm, curiously looking around, like a lively little sparrow. She chirped, "You said you'd take me to a fun place. Is this it?" She looked around, her gaze pausing on my face for 2 seconds before moving away. "Wow, that cake looks good. I want to eat it." Augustine watched her with a smile, indulging her as she turned my birthday banquet into a complete mess. The guests around whispered, "How can she be so brazen, daring to act wild in front of Clara? She's favored. After all, even though they're married." Didn't Clara also throw herself at him shamelessly? How embarrassing, to lose face on her birthday and not dare to say a word. If I were her, I'd want to disappear. I wrapped myself in an expensive evening gown, pretending not to hear those mocking words. I found Augustine and softly said, "We had an agreement that you wouldn't bring her in front of me. No matter what. Basic decency still needs to be." Before I could finish, he rudely interrupted me. Having had a few drinks with Julia, his eyes held a hint of intoxication. When he looked down at me, the contempt and disdain in his gaze were even more evident. "Clara, it seems I've spoiled you too much before." He smiled. "With your status, do you think you're entitled to talk to me about decency?" I froze on the spot. The particularly bright lights above shone down. The hard shell I had painstakingly built melted like ice under his mocking gaze. Coming from a small, insignificant family like the Ning family, yet able to marry Augustine, everyone thought I was reaching above my station. In fact, I wasn't even fully considered part of the Ning family. Truly pathetic. But women from that kind of background are naturally like that. Behind me, someone's conversation grew a bit louder. It reached our ears. Augustine handed me a check with a distant expression. "The project you said you wanted to invest in last time, go invest in it yourself." "Clara, don't think I owe you anything." He raised an eyebrow. "If you learn how to please me better, you might fetch a higher price for yourself." Chapter 02. The banquet that had turned into a farce finally ended. Augustine left, holding the drunken Julia in his arms. They hadn't even walked out of my sight before they started kissing under the garden lights. Through the rain-streaked glass, I calmly watched them for a moment. Then I lowered my head and carefully put away the check. I took out my phone and opened the pinned conversation. The message I had sent before the banquet started, "I kind of miss you," had received 6 replies in total. 5 hours ago, 1. 4 hours ago, "I'm going to train." 3 hours ago, "Actually, I don't mind being interrupted during training." 2 hours ago, "They said today is your birthday." An hour ago, "Happy birthday." And just now, a new message popped up, "I'm coming to see you." I curled my lips into a smile. I replied, "No need. I'll come to watch your match next week." At the top of the screen, the words typing flashed for a long time. He finally replied with 2 messages. "All right. Don't stand me up." Chapter 03. Over the next month, Augustine openly attended various events with Julia. They looked just like a young couple in love. Augustine, a billionaire, was dragged by her to eat street food, take photo booth pictures, and kiss in the sea breeze of Bali. He even followed her to watch Ryan's live matches. Ryan, the hottest esports player at the moment, a 19-year-old who had already displayed astonishing talent. Just last year, he helped his team win the World Championship in the international tournament. Julia wore his fan headband, holding Augustine's arm. enthusiastically taking photos at the stadium entrance. Augustine, a bit jealous, wrapped his arm around her waist. Do you like that little boy who hasn't even grown up yet so much? I just like watching his matches. Julia smiled sweetly and kissed him on the cheek. Of course. I love you the most. My car was parked by the roadside, and I witnessed the entire scene. Just as I suppressed the nausea rising in my chest, I received a call from Augustine about that project you mentioned yesterday. Let's discuss it another day. His tone was cold and impatient. I'm busy tonight. I won't be coming home. I smiled silently and deliberately asked, what's keeping you busy? Watching Ryan's match. Before he could finish, Julia suddenly sneered beside him. That boring old woman, does she even know who Ryan is? Through the car window, I saw her snatch the phone from Augustine's hand. Lady, don't ask unnecessary questions. Bye. Her tone was arrogant and domineering, but she was young and beautiful, like a brightly blooming flower. So Augustine merely indulged her, pinching her cheek as they walked into the VIP seats side by side. Everyone prefers the younger and more beautiful. I, of course, am no exception. My phone screen lit up again. It was a call from Ryan. His tone wasn't very pleasant. Did you come or not? Last time you said you'd come to watch my match but canceled at the last minute. You're not doing that again, are you? I'm here. I curled my finger and tapped on the car window. But you're too popular. I could only buy a seat in the stands. I'll come find you after the match. Ryan chuckled lightly. Come on. You think you need to buy a ticket to watch my match? I had the club reserve a box for you. Just go there directly. He paused, then suddenly said, Clara, have you thought about it? Last time you stood me up and said you'd make it up to me if I win this time. What's my reward? What do you want? What I want. Anything goes? The last few words were spoken in a slightly hoarse voice. Even through the phone, I could imagine the curve of his lips, and those beautiful yet sharp eyes looking at me, a hidden desire gradually rising. I indulgently smiled. Anything. There was a moment of silence on the other end. He said, Clara, if I win the championship, tonight you're mine. The match began. Through the glass, I saw Ryan put on his headset, his fingers flying swiftly over the keyboard. His expression was serious and stern, his focused gaze unwavering, until the screen displayed the bright red 3 o'clock. Champions! Only then did he stand up amid the deafening cheers of the crowd, meeting my gaze across the people and intersecting lights. My lips moved silently. Congratulations. He smiled too, imitating me, mouthing silently, now, you're mine. This night belonged to Ryan. Chapter 04. After the post-match interview, it was already late. Outside, a light drizzle had started. I had just turned into the parking lot from the dim back alley when a hand pulled me into a nearby car. Clara, planning to run away again? The cold scent of rain enveloped me, but the warmth of the young man's body was scorching. A word flashed through my mind, full of youthful vigor. I tried to struggle a bit, but he only held me tighter. I could only explain good-naturedly. No, weren't you still in the interview? I just went to take care of something and didn't expect you'd finish so soon. Clara always says things so nicely, but no one knows what you're really thinking. He hugged me from behind, his lips close to my ear. The breath he exhaled was warm. As he breathed, it stirred my hair, leaving a tingling sensation. The interview wasn't over, but I was bored to death. I wanted to see you, so I came out early. Young boys really have boundless energy. Under the dim car lights, his delicate kisses fell inch by inch. Finally, his canine teeth lightly grazed the back of my neck, causing a slight sting. Clara, time to fulfill your promise. I won the match. How are you going to reward me tonight? My vision became hazy. I blinked away the tears of emotion and managed to utter a word. In the gradually clearing view, two very familiar figures appeared. That's right, August. This is Ryan's car. The next second, Julia bent down and knocked on the car window. Her tone was enthusiastic. Ryan, I'm your fan. Could you give me and my boyfriend an autograph? Chapter 05. Her eyes were almost right next to mine, even though I knew she couldn't see inside from outside. Under her seemingly piercing gaze, I still froze completely. From behind came the young man's husky whisper with a hint of a smile. Clara. So tense. Nervous? The canine teeth embedded in the skin of my neck retreated. Just as the sting became pronounced, it was covered by a warm, moist sensation. His slightly rapid breath brushed against the back of my neck. If you're so afraid of being found out, why did you provoke me in the first place? How about I roll down the window and tell them to get lost, okay? This was the first time I faintly sensed the lurking madness within him. Not getting a response for a while, Julia's expression became a bit stiff. A flash of displeasure crossed her eyes. She tugged at Augustine behind her, and he cooperatively stepped forward. Mr. Chi, I am Augustine from the Fu Corporation. My girlfriend would like your autograph. As he spoke, his tone carried undisguised arrogance, as if certain that with his status, Ryan wouldn't refuse. After 2 seconds of silence, Ryan suddenly let out a cold chuckle. He grabbed a jacket from beside him and covered my head, hiding my face. Before I could react, he pushed open the car door and stepped out with his long legs. Through the jacket, I couldn't see anything. The world was only blurred light and shadow, and Ryan's voice, cold to the extreme. Tisk. Don't know you, Augustine said in a deep voice. What did you say? I said, I don't know you. Ryan enunciated each word. What? Got a problem understanding human speech? Augustine, always pampered and flattered, had never been so humiliated, even without seeing his face. I could imagine his dark and grim expression at that moment. I couldn't help but curve my lips slightly. Aw, that's... Julia suddenly exclaimed. Is that a woman's dress in the car? Before she could finish, Ryan interrupted her. What's it to you? Please leave, okay? Chapter 06. The car door slammed shut, and Ryan got back in. I was about to remove the jacket when he grabbed my wrist. Then my vision suddenly cleared, but the soft fabric wrapped around both my wrists, pulling them above my head and holding them down. The young man leaned in closer, his features becoming dazzlingly handsome at this distance, but his eyes showed obvious displeasure. Well, isn't this a coincidence, Clara? That's your cheating husband? At such close range, the hint of coldness between his raised eyebrows became more pronounced. In this extremely ambiguous posture, I couldn't help but smile wryly. How am I any different from him? Ryan didn't say anything more, just kissed me with a bit of force. The familiar scent of eucalyptus, mixed with the freshness of rain, gradually filled every inch of the car. Silently, it enveloped me, until my mind became lost in the surging waves. I heard his voice. At least, your taste is much better than his. Clara, you chose me. Outside the car, the rain kept drizzling. Inside, the humid mist was like a torrential downpour. Ryan's home wasn't far. It took half an hour by car. As soon as we entered, he grabbed my shoulders. The next second, my lips were sealed with almost ravaging force. Kissed over and over. I'll be gentle, he said. I won't hurt you. His scorching breath brushed against my neck, moving downward as he pressed on the protruding wing bones of my back. But when he touched those uneven scars, he suddenly stopped. What's this? His breathing became suddenly rapid. Did he hurt you? I was stunned for a second, realizing he was talking about those old whip marks. I chuckled immediately. No. After all, our families have business ties. He wouldn't go so far as to. I didn't finish speaking, because my lips were completely sealed by the young man's passionate and even reckless kiss. Chapter 07. When I woke up the next morning, the sky was just beginning to lighten. Ryan was still sound asleep beside me. Our clothes were tangled together, crumpled and tossed by the bedside. Through a sliver in the curtains, a bit of light peeked in. I turned my head to glance at him, then got up and left. My car was parked downstairs. As I got in, my assistant handed me an iced Americano and whispered, President Ning, the second phase of the equity acquisition was completed last night. So far, no one has discovered our actions. I held the cup, quietly listening to her report the details. Also, your father called this morning, ordering you to return to the Ning family residence today. I nodded. Ignore him. If he calls again, block his number. Continue with everything else according to the original plan. The assistant nodded. Before starting the car, she hesitated and glanced at my neck. President Ning, your neck. I looked in the rearview mirror and understood. Raising my hand, I buttoned my shirt all the way to the top. Don't worry about it, a puppy bite. I had planned to go home, change clothes, and then head to the company, but I never expected Augustine to be at home. He sat on the sofa with his shirt open, holding some documents in his hand. Seeing me, he said coldly, Clara, aren't you going to explain? I glanced at them. They were the divorce papers I had previously asked a lawyer to draft. I remained silent. Speak up. Cat got your tongue? He suddenly stood up, striding toward me. Do you think you're qualified to ask for a divorce? Clara, have you forgotten how you shamelessly knelt before me, clutching my pants, begging me to marry you? He threw the divorce papers in my face. The thin edge of the paper cut the skin at the corner of my eye, and blood started flowing. I raised my hand, feeling the sticky wetness, taking a light breath. I thought you and Julia were true love and needed me to make way for her. You have no right to decide my affairs. Augustine laughed in extreme anger. Clara, you're just a dog raised by the Ning family and sent to me. Now that the Ning family sees you being treated a bit better and can say a few words at Ning Corp, have you forgotten your place? He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look up at him. For the second phase of the West River District project, Fu Corporation will cease all cooperation with Ning Corporation. Clara, this is your lesson. Only when I want to give you dignity do you have the right to live like a human being. He released my chin, chuckling softly, returning to his usual superior demeanor. Go back and think carefully about how to please me so I'll forgive your offense this time. For example, kneel and beg me once more. Chapter 08. After Augustine left, I remained standing there, motionless. Sunlight slanted in through the window. Standing in the light, I slowly exhaled and took out my phone from my bag. Only then did I realize that Ryan's name was trending. #RyanGirlfriend. According to insiders, after last night's regional finals, Ryan had a private meeting with his girlfriend in the parking lot. The two appeared intimate. The gossip account also posted a photo. In the dimly lit parking lot, fine rain was falling. Ryan stood by the open car door, one hand on the door frame, his expression cold and eyes intensely sharp. Everything inside the car was tightly concealed. Only a soft corner of a blue skirt and the logo of high heels were visible in the corner. The comment section exploded. Unless I'm mistaken, isn't Ryan only 19? And he's already dating? He's 19, an adult. What's wrong with dating? It's not affecting his performance. Am I the only one curious about who his girlfriend is? I checked the brand of those high heels. They're very expensive. Tens of thousands per pair. And hers is a limited edition. Could he be kept by some sugar mommy? People from the club quickly called. Boss. Reporters are asking about this situation. Should we handle PR? Yes. Pressing on the wound on my cheek, I calmly replied. Deny everything about Ryan's relationship. However, before the press conference could officially begin, someone photographed him at a cafe near the club. In the footage, Ryan sat cold-faced in front of a piece of strawberry cake. Anyone could see the displeasure in his eyes. Someone bravely approached and asked, Ryan, are you in a bad mood? He glanced over and replied, yes, had a fight with my girlfriend. This video quickly shot to the top of the trending list. When his call came through, I was standing in front of the Ning family's old residence. Clara, he said, are you really planning to sleep with me and then run away? Chapter 09. The twilight gradually swallowed the dusk inch by inch. Standing in the gradually darkening blood-red glow, I calmly responded, yes, I said. After getting you, I realized you're just SOSO, not that interesting. After a few seconds of silence, Ryan spoke, his voice carrying a slight tremble. I told you not to play me, Clara. Adults say such tacit lies all the time. How could you take it seriously? I chuckled. I warned you. Ryan, I'm just like Augustine, we're not good people. The other end remained completely silent. Moments later, the call disconnected. I pushed open the door and walked in. A porcelain plate flew toward me, shattering against my forehead. Clara, I had you marry into the Fu family to please Augustine and maintain the long-term cooperation between the Ning and Fu families. You couldn't even do this one thing properly? My father stood in the living room, his face cold as frost. To the study. In the study, there was a leather whip. The crisscross scars on my back were left when I initially refused to marry Augustine. At that time, Augustine's original girlfriend was Ning Miao, my father's legitimate daughter. Unfortunately, the two had a fight, and Ning Miao married someone else out of spite. In a rage, Augustine wanted to sever ties with the Ning family. My father, having no other choice, brought me back, the illegitimate daughter who had lived in the slums for 20 years. A full 40 lashes. By the end, I was lying on the ground, my back a bloody mess, almost exposing bone. Amidst the overwhelming pain, I heard my own voice. Fine, I'll go. I'll find a way to make him marry me. At this moment, it was just like 4 years ago. The whip cracked through the air, landing on me. But this time, I didn't shed a single tear. Only burgeoning ambition mixed with pain grew rapidly within my flesh and blood. Facing the bright lights of the study, I looked up and smiled. Father, I will find a way to make Fu Corporation continue cooperating with the Ning family. Chapter 10. That evening, I had a bit to drink. I dreamt about the first time I met Ryan. At that time, he had just transferred back home from an overseas team. Young as he was already the hottest player in the entire esports scene. At that not-so-large business banquet, he was one of the focal points of the whole event. When I went to the garden holding my wine glass, I happened to bump into him. I smiled warmly and kindly. Hello, Mr. Chi. I'm Clara. Oh, I know you. He lazily responded. Just now inside, they were discussing you, calling you the Ninja Turtle. On my way out, I saw your husband speeding away with his girlfriend. My smile didn't waver. I know. You're not angry? Not angry. Don't you want to get back at him? How? Under the gentle moonlight, his youthful features were unbelievably handsome, with a hint of sharpness gleaming in his eyes. A sudden surge of drunkenness made me lean closer to him. Could it be that Mr. Chi is willing to be my partner in revenge? Ryan burst into laughter. Clara, I don't have such particular hobbies. I blinked my eyes. That's really a pity. Saying that, I was about to step back, but my wrist was suddenly grabbed by him. Giving up so easily? He raised an eyebrow slightly. Perhaps if Clara says a few more words, I might be tempted. The sudden ringing of the phone jolted me awake from the dream. I answered, and Ryan's voice came through. Clara, I'm downstairs at your place. Chapter 11. He still carried the chill of a late autumn night, yet the warmth of his body was scorching, and his kisses that landed carried a bit of fierce recklessness. Clara, you spoke so harshly, I thought you really meant it. But you weren't serious. Those words were just meant for me too. Not fully sober. I frowned and pinched his chin. You're noisy. If you're going to do it, just do it. Don't talk so much. Ryan's movements halted instantly. After a moment, he curled his lips, slowly pulling into a dangerously beautiful smile. Clara, you said it. The night wind rose abruptly, rippling the autumn waters. In the end, I clung to Ryan's shoulders, unable to stop trembling, watching his palm under the enveloping light. It seemed as if turbulent waters were flowing across. When Augustine's call came through, my whole body tensed up. Ryan drew a sharp breath, held down my hand that was about to press the hang-up button, and answered the call. Clara, you went back to the Ning family and got beaten, and still haven't thought about how to appease me? Augustine's voice carried a bit of drunkenness. Forget it. I'll give you a chance. I'm at night bar. Come pick me up. Before I could get out the words I'm busy, a sudden intensification from behind threw my breath into chaos. Even though I quickly bit my lip, I couldn't suppress a few ambiguous gasps from escaping. Augustine's tone changed dramatically. What are you doing? But I could no longer utter complete words. Only after Ryan eased his movements did I use trembling fingertips to hang up the phone. Ryan chuckled softly, leaning close to my ear, his breath scorching. Clara, from now on, it's entirely my time. Chapter 12. Ryan left the next morning. Before he left, I thought for a moment and couldn't help but say, you shouldn't have admitted to the reporters that you have a girlfriend. You're still young. He tilted his head and looked at me. Aren't you my girlfriend? Just playing around. Oh, he nodded indifferently. Then you can only play with me, Clara. A few days later, there was a grand business banquet. When I attended, I immediately saw Augustine at the center, surrounded and flattered by everyone, and Julia affectionately holding his arm. Someone suddenly shouted, "Clara is here." The originally lively atmosphere instantly cooled down. A group of eyes all fell on me. Moments later, Augustine suddenly sneered, "Found that your tricks didn't work that night. So you've chased me here?" Julia also laughed along. "Clara, you're really childish. If you want to make August jealous, at least make it believable. Look in the mirror. Someone like you probably couldn't get anyone even if you threw yourself at them." I suddenly understood. That night on the phone, Augustine did hear my voice, but he was so confident, thinking I was just using tactics to deliberately make him jealous. Someone beside him, eager for drama, released a recording from 4 years ago when I went to beg him to marry me. "Augustine, I'm Clara from the Ning family. It's okay if you don't know me now, but if we get married in the future, I can help you." That night, he had just come out of a private club with a few buddies. With a bit of drunkenness, he playfully looked at me standing in front of him. "You're an illegitimate child. What can you help me with? Why don't you kneel down now? Say some nice words. Beg me properly. Maybe I'll really agree. For example, say that you'll be my most loyal dog." After a few seconds of silence, the recording captured the clear sound of my knees hitting the ground. "As long as Mr. Fu is willing to marry me, I will become your most loyal dog." The people around burst into laughter. Wow, she really said it. An illegitimate daughter from that kind of place, dreaming of rising up the ranks. Where's the dignity? Augustine, holding Julia's hand, raised an eyebrow. His teasing expression was just like 4 years ago. Using such ridiculous tricks to get my attention, why not just kneel here again? For a moment, almost everyone's eyes were focused on me, carrying scrutinizing and contemptuous looks. An intense sense of shame surged up. But not far away, a girl pointed at me and exclaimed, "Her shoes, how are they exactly the same as the limited edition pair that Ryan's girlfriend has? Isn't it said that they're sold out everywhere?" Augustine's face suddenly changed in front of me. The next second, a burst of cheers came from the entrance. "Ryan is here." Chapter 13. I abruptly turned my head. I saw the young man pushing past a sea of cameras, his expression indifferent as he moved through the crowd. He truly had an exceptionally striking face. His eyebrows were sharp, and when he slightly lowered them, his aura became even more formidable. But when he focused on me and smiled, it was as if starlight flickered in his eyes for a moment. He walked straight up to me, gently lowered his head, and patiently smoothed the messy strands of hair by my ear. Then he affectionately called out, "Clara." Augustine suddenly stood up, disbelief gradually appearing in his eyes. He said in a mix of shock and anger, "The person in the car that night was you?" Julia, clinging to his arm, seemed to realize something, and her smile became somewhat forced. She accused me, "Clara, you're actually having an affair during your marriage. Don't you think you're going too far?" Ryan stood beside me, raising his hand to hold my shoulder, his whole body almost leaning against me. My phone vibrated slightly twice in my handbag. I took it out and saw a message from my assistant, President Ning. Everything went smoothly. The contract has just been signed. The unease hanging over my heart suddenly settled, melting away silently like snow in spring. I slowly exhaled, straightened up, and looked at Julia in front of me. "You know, you're the least qualified person to say such things." I curved my eyes into a smile, and my gaze shifted to Augustine beside her. "You like them young, pretty, and obedient." "I do too." "What's so strange about that?" Ryan's hand on my shoulder tightened slightly. Looking at Augustine, he let out a cold laugh. "If you were attractive enough to her, would I have been able to take advantage of the situation?" Augustine shouted coldly, "Clara, shout all you want. That's all you can do." Ryan was tall, standing half a head above Augustine when upright. He looked down at Augustine from above, the contempt in his eyes evident. "When something happens, all you do is question Clara. Why don't you reflect on yourself? Look at the wrinkles on your face, your drooping eyes, a middle-aged man who can't even speak properly. What do you have to compete with me?" being publicly humiliated by a young man 10 years his junior. Augustine's face turned extremely grim. Emotions surged in his eyes. But in the end, he looked at me, using the same threat he had employed countless times before. From now on, Fu Corporation will no longer cooperate with the Ning family. Who cares? I suddenly interrupted him, a mocking smile slowly spreading on my lips. Instead of that, you'd better quickly ask your subordinates why the latest five-nation trade cooperation contract didn't get signed and ended up going to someone else. Chapter 14. After saying this, I turned and walked away. Ryan followed closely behind. I tilted my head slightly and asked him, "Shouldn't you be in training? How come you're here?" "I received an invitation too." He lowered his eyes slightly, gazing into mine. "And you haven't contacted me these past few days." "I missed you, Clara." I had indeed been very busy these days, busy snatching food from the jaws of a tiger. Originally, I came tonight just to confirm whether Augustine was really here, to prevent him from making any new moves on the eve of the contract signing. Fortunately, I had overestimated Augustine. He had always looked down on me, so in the past few years of marriage, I secretly started a company right under his nose, acquired an esports team, and brought it back to life, moving between Fu Corporation and Ning Corporation. I gradually expanded my company step by step through the information I obtained. Leading up to this moment, coming back to my senses, we had already reached the door. I hadn't yet figured out how to respond to Ryan's straightforward words when a group of reporters surrounded us. "Miss Ning, are you the other person in that car photo from the other night? May I ask, is your marriage with Mr. Fu already over? Publicly cheating during your marriage, what do you think about this? Miss Ning, boldly bringing your affair partner to such an occasion, do you feel no shame but rather pride?" The last reporter's question carried blatant and undisguised malice. I stared into the eyes of that male reporter, which hid excitement and disdain, and suddenly laughed. "Isn't that a question you should be asking Augustine inside? From the second day after we got married 4 years ago, he was photographed on average every 2 months taking different new girlfriends to various events." "What did you say then?" I tapped my chin with my fingertip, feigning sudden realization. "Oh, you said that marriages in wealthy families are driven by interests. It's normal for both parties to get what they need. It's also normal to keep someone young and agreeable by their side. If I really did cheat, it was Augustine who first violated the marital agreement. He was in the wrong, and I'm just retaliating appropriately. Moreover, my relationship with Ryan isn't what you all imagine." As I spoke, I stepped slightly to the side, unnoticeably avoiding his attempt to hold my hand. "Haven't you always been curious about who currently holds the largest share after the Starlight team was acquired by a mysterious investor?" The young man suddenly turned his head. In the sudden, chilly night wind, I spoke calmly and indifferently. "I am his boss." Chapter 15. When I said this, countless past scenes involving Ryan flashed before my eyes, like fragments cut from a film reel. At that banquet, I added him as a friend, but there was no further contact afterward. Until that night, when a feverish Ryan mistakenly called me instead of his friend to bring him medicine. I carried a bag of fever-reducing medicine and used the password to open his apartment door. He was burning up, his cheeks flushed red, and his mind probably not clear. After taking the medicine, his hot cheek pressed against my hand, rubbing back and forth. "I'm so hot, and so cold." I looked down at him and quietly asked, "Then, shall I hold you?" Ryan looked at me with misty eyes, tugged at the corner of his mouth, but his voice was hoarse. "Clara, are you trying to take advantage of me?" "Yes," I said, "but you also have the chance to refuse me." He didn't answer. He just reached out and pulled me, causing me to fall onto him. My hands and body were always cool, probably feeling comfortable. He wrapped himself around me, clinging closer and closer. "Clara, isn't wearing such tight clothes uncomfortable?" "Uncomfortable." I cupped his face. "Then help me take them off." Good boy. Even though we didn't go all the way, but all the confusion and inversion of our relationship started from that night. I admit that at first, I was attracted by his looks and didn't think about having a long-term relationship with him. All I wanted was that moment of pleasure, and he was so skilled at entangling with me that I thought he felt the same way. The sudden force on my wrist snapped me back to reality. Ryan, with a cold expression, grabbed my wrist and pulled me forward with large strides. Some reporters tried to block our way to ask more questions. He raised an eyebrow and looked at them with a half smile. I'm going back with my boss to review the match and discuss tactics for the next season. Do you want to come along and listen? The coldness and sharpness in his voice were almost bursting forth. The reporters still wouldn't give up, reaching out to block him. Then what about the girlfriend you mentioned before? Ryan lost his patience and expressionlessly spat out one word. Scram. Chapter 16. The moonlight weaves like fabric. Ryan and I sit in the car, the atmosphere silent and flowing wordlessly. After a few seconds, he suddenly chuckled softly. Clara, aren't you planning to say something to me? I sighed lightly. It's my fault. From the beginning, I thought this was an unspoken game between adults, but I also told you, we were just having fun. That's not what I'm talking about. He abruptly interrupted me. Why didn't you ever tell me that you're the owner of the team? I looked at him calmly. It would have been troublesome if I did. He paused, seeming to suddenly understand. That day when we were photographed and became a trending topic, the manager came to me saying there would be a press conference to deny the relationship. That was your idea, wasn't it? Ryan leaned in closer, propping himself on the seat behind me. In your eyes, am I someone who can't be seen in public? Clara? The distance between us closed inch by inch, our breaths intertwined, and the atmosphere became extremely tense. But in the reflection of his eyes, I only saw my own calm and indifferent gaze. Because we're not in a relationship, the path I take in life was decided 4 years ago. I won't let you disrupt my pace. As for why I didn't tell you I'm the owner of the club, it's because after I deliberated for a moment, choosing a less sharp word. Fleeting affair ends. I hope it won't affect your future work in the team. Ensuring that I can help the team achieve good results and gain higher commercial value is also part of your career. His nose was almost touching mine. Amidst our intertwined breaths, I once again caught the cool scent of eucalyptus on him. Since you've thought it all out so thoroughly, aren't you worried that I'll take advantage of this break in the competition to transfer to another team? I remained silent for a few seconds. That's your choice. He scoffed, got off me, pushed open the car door, and left without looking back. Chapter 17. There's another reason. Ryan is only 19, at the peak of his career, and my marriage with Augustine isn't over yet. If our unspeakable relationship were exposed, it would only become a stain on his life. But this is a trivial reason, not worth mentioning, so I didn't say it. I just sat in the car, watching his figure disappear completely from my sight. Then I took out a pack of cigarettes from my pocket and lit one. I didn't smoke it. I just watched it burn quietly between my fingers. The rising white smoke blurred my vision. The choking smell of cheap tobacco seemed to pull me back to many years ago. My father is a disgusting man. He used his decent looks to marry into the Ning family, yet couldn't resist cheating. Afraid of being found out, he sought out my mother, a masseuse. I was discovered by the eldest daughter of the Ning family shortly after I was born. My father knelt on the ground, crying and begging for her forgiveness, and finally returned to the family. I grew up with my mother in that small massage parlor in an old apartment building. She didn't really take care of me. Besides attending to clients, she spent her time at the mahjong table. At school, no one liked me. They deliberately whispered in front of me, saying that, like my mother, I had caught some dirty disease at a young age. It's hard for me to find a specific and accurate word to describe those days. But whenever I think of the past, the first scene that comes to mind is that window emitting cheap pink light, and the gloomy and lewd gazes of the customers coming and going as they fell upon me. My desires and ambitions are greater than anyone else's. I can't wait to climb higher and higher. For that, I can pay any price. The cigarette burned out in my hand. The falling ash burned me slightly, bringing me back to reality. I dialed my assistant's number. The final phase of the equity acquisition plan starts tonight. Chapter 18. For an entire week, I was almost always at the company. During this time, Augustine called me many times, but I hung up on all of them. He sent messages again. I didn't even read them, just casually replied, You've already reviewed the divorce agreement beforehand. I've asked the lawyer to send you the final version. If there's no problem, please sign it. The five-nation trade cooperation contract we secured used to be one of Fu Corporation's key projects. Using Augustine's cooperation with the Ning family, I extracted information and core technologies step by step. Then I bypassed Fu Corporation and contacted the counterparts in advance. I was still busy in the office when my assistant hurriedly knocked on the door. President Ning, your father and Augustine from Fu Corporation have come to the company and insist on seeing you. I paused and looked up. Invite them to the meeting room. As I spoke, I got up and walked toward the door. Before opening it, I turned back and added, also, call the police and report that someone is causing a disturbance at the company. Entering the meeting room, I was met with a slap from my father. Using all his strength, my face turned to the side from the impact. My ears buzzed, and a bloody taste burst in my mouth. Ridiculous! He pointed at my nose and cursed. Have you forgotten who you are? Who gave you the nerve to acquire Ning Corporation's shares and embezzle funds? Dad, it seems you've made a mistake. I interrupted him, slightly raising an eyebrow. After 3 equity transfers, there is no more Ning Corporation. If I want, I can rename it at any time, or even merge it directly into my company. Ning Corporation's attempt to transform failed. Its market value kept shrinking, and clients were lost. After my father's legitimate wife passed away, he took over the company, but he was used to living off others and couldn't handle it himself. After I married Augustine, for the convenience of cooperation, my father arranged for me to work at Ning Corporation, a very small position, with lots of work to do, but without any real power. But that's okay. What I want has never been just Ning Corporation, a company already in decline. Clara, Augustine asked me in a deep voice from the side. When did you start planning all this? I pretended to think seriously. Probably since the night I went to find you 4 years ago, acquiring Ning Corporation's shares, snatching projects from me, making other investments. Where did you get so much capital? You studied finance. Don't you know what leverage trading is? He suddenly stood up, staring at me with an ugly expression. You dare to gamble with such high risks? Why wouldn't I dare? My life has always been a big gamble. I pulled up the corners of my mouth and slowly smiled. Besides, the fact that you're standing here now proves that I've won. Chapter 19. My father still wanted to rush up and hit me but was stopped by the police who had arrived. His hands were twisted behind his back, and he cursed at me. You unfilial daughter. Whore. I ignored him, just looked at the police. Turning my head, I showed them my swollen cheek and the dried blood at the corner of my mouth. He suddenly broke into my company and assaulted me. There's surveillance footage of the entire process. I now feel dizzy and nauseous, suspecting a concussion, and need to go to the hospital for further examination. The police took my father away. During the whole process, Augustine just stood by and watched me, his eyes flickering with a strange light. Clara, have you ever thought, he suddenly spoke, that we don't have to divorce? I looked at him expressionlessly. Clara, I really regret it now. Now that Ning Corporation is already in your hands, we can have an equal partnership. We've been married for 4 years, and you've always been so good to me before. Isn't it because you have some feelings for me? I looked down on you before because the rumors about you were quite unpleasant. Plus, at first, when you came to me, you were so submissive. I didn't know. He looked at me as if deeply affectionate. Didn't know what? I abruptly interrupted him. Didn't know that you're shameless? A few days ago, you were flaunting your affair in front of me, and now that you realize I'm not as helpless as you thought, you're interested again? Or because you lost that trade contract, Fu Corporation is greatly affected, and Mr. Fu has to swallow his pride and come to me, trying to get a share? Augustine's expression instantly turned cold. I twirled the pen in my hand, looking at him with interest. Now that the contract is in my hands, what qualifications do you have to talk about an equal partnership with me? Why don't you kneel down now, say a few nice words, and beg me properly? Maybe I'll agree. Augustine's face showed extreme humiliation. If there's nothing else, please leave, Mr. Fu. I nodded politely at him. Sign the divorce agreement and send it to me. And Mr. Fu, don't think about playing any tricks. I stayed in the Fu family for 4 years. I have evidence in my hands. It's better to keep some dignity. Chapter 20. After Augustine left, I got up and went out. My assistant was standing by the door, holding her phone, looking at me eagerly. What's wrong, boss? You were so cool. She handed me an ice pack, then looked at me with admiration. When you chose me back then, saying you wanted to overthrow Ning Corporation and build a new kingdom, I thought you were joking. And just now when you said please leave, I thought I was seeing Ryan, boss. Although you told the reporters that you're just his boss, the way he looks at you is definitely not innocent. As she spoke, she opened her phone to show me. I just realized that Ryan's name was trending again, but this time, it was with me. Hashtag Ryan and Clara. Hashtag Clara, the mysterious owner of Starlight. Hashtag Ryan becoming a third wheel for love. Hashtag the way he looks at her is definitely not innocent. For trending topics, why didn't the team's operations manager notify me? I glanced over, pressing the ice pack on my swollen cheek, and looked at the assistant. Has any public opinion management been done? She scratched her head. It seems there's no need, because the public's comments are quite positive. I clicked into the comments section and found that what she said was true. Clara is so beautiful. Having such a boss is acceptable for my brother. Not to mention their relationship hasn't been confirmed yet. Even if it's true, in wealthy marriages, each plays their own way. What's so strange? Aren't the reporters blind? Why doesn't anyone interview Augustine, that rotten cucumber who cheated dozens of times in 4 years? But they focus on my brother and his sponsor? I believe in Clara, but I don't trust my brother. The way he looks at her is practically drooling. The attached picture was from the entrance of that night's banquet. Behind us, the hall was brightly lit. Ryan and I stood side by side at the entrance. I looked calmly at the camera, but he slightly tilted his head to look at me, whether it was the lights or moonlight reflecting in his pupils. His eyes looking at me seemed particularly bright, with traces of lingering emotions. So this is how it looks from an outsider's perspective. I stared at this photo for a while, deliberately ignoring the ripple in my heart, and returned the phone to the assistant. She looked at me eagerly. I smiled. Notify everyone, meeting in 40 minutes. Normally, such topics wouldn't be discussed for long, but I didn't expect that in the following period. Discussions about Ryan and me grew increasingly intense, especially after the news of my divorce from Augustine was exposed. Sugar mommy is divorced. Bro, go for it. I'm just shipping this couple. Am I spoiling them too much? How about this? Ryan, win the national championship, and we'll help you pursue your wife. This comment received nearly 100,000 likes. Floating at the top of the hot comments, I asked the assistant, what's going on? Originally, this trending topic should have cooled down quickly, but a few days ago, the recording of you begging Augustine was exposed by someone. At first, many people were criticizing you in the comments, but that night, a writer penned fan fiction about you and Ryan. The assistant looked at me cautiously. They portrayed you two as a clingy, wild puppy and a ruthless career woman who stops at nothing for success. Such character settings are very popular now. That story was particularly captivating and even included some atmospheric intimate scenes. Everyone suddenly started shipping you two. Due to the ship's popularity, several more sponsors have expressed interest in Starlight. She opened her photo album to show me. I silently flipped through the pictures she had saved, my fingertip pausing on one for a moment. Keep your phone to yourself, I said. Let the team operations keep an eye on it. As long as public opinion is positive, it's okay. If any negative comments appear, suppress them immediately. She nodded repeatedly. Before leaving, I heard her muttering, the boss is really cold-hearted. Still arranging work in such a situation, but it makes shipping them even better. Hee hee. Chapter 21. Perhaps it was after seeing my assistant's shares. That night, I unexpectedly dreamt of Ryan after a long time. I dreamt of the night he won the championship. After Augustine and Julia left, I was pressed against the back seat by Ryan. His jacket bound my wrists, and my slipping clothes hung loosely around my arms. I panted uneasily. Wait until we get home. We'll be discovered here. Shoo. He placed his slender index finger against my lips. If you're afraid of being discovered, Clara, be careful and don't make a sound. Tonight, you are my prize. The one spacious space felt narrow in the gradually warming air. In the end, as if manipulated by his beautiful fingers, I was sent to a cloud wrapped in mist. I saw Ryan again a few days later at the team's meeting. When I entered, all the team members stood up to greet me, except for him, who sat indifferently in his seat. His support teammate, Lin Jua, tugged at his sleeve. Little Chi, the boss is here. Only then did his gaze drift over to me. Hello, boss. Throughout the entire meeting, Ryan and I hardly had any private interaction. Young people are fickle by nature. I thought he had probably moved on from our brief fling. That was fine. After the meeting, I stayed behind to tidy up some things. When I went out, I found Ryan leaning against the hallway wall, head down, playing on his Nintendo Switch. I thought for a moment and spoke gently. I've seen what's trending online. Just a bunch of kids messing around. Don't mind it too much. The spring season starts in 3 days. I'll have the PR department contact the media to gradually shift the focus to the competition. He paused his game, looked up at me. You've seen it? I have. Did you like it? I couldn't help but be stunned for a second, then responded. It was shared by my assistant. I didn't look closely. Keep it. No need to manage the public opinion. He tilted his head slightly, speaking casually. The more attention it gets, the more it enhances the team's commercial value. The boss spent a fortune on my transfer fee. I should at least provide some value, shouldn't I? Chapter 22. Within 2 days, Augustine was anonymously reported for tax evasion and illegal appropriation and was taken into custody. That evening, the writer who initially penned fanfiction about Ryan and me updated with a new piece. To celebrate the ex-husband's imprisonment, here's a special piece. I casually clicked in to see. It was some conference room play. After each match, within a couple of days, she would update with a new work. Surprisingly, she accumulated hundreds of thousands of fans in just a few months. In the last match of the spring season, Ryan and his teammates won decisively with a 3-1 victory. As the team's new owner, I stood behind Ryan, watching them lift the trophy together. Lin Jua turned back and said, "Boss, come join us for a photo." I agreed and walked over, only to find that the only vacant spot left was beside Ryan. Standing shoulder to shoulder, we held the championship trophy together. It was already late spring, the time when it meets summer, and the weather was hot. He wore short sleeves, and his slightly warm skin was pressed against mine. The eucalyptus scent, made more distinct by the heat, inexplicably reminded me of the article I read before bed last night. That faint sweet scent on Clara blended with the woody aroma on Ryan, becoming a requiem under the moonlight. Moist waves crashing against the rocks, foaming white bubbles, every inch exuding such a complex fragrance. Ryan asked hoarsely, "Can I have a taste?" "Boss, why is your face so red?" I snapped back to reality. We were already at the celebration banquet. Although I didn't want to admit it, I had been absent-minded all along, my mind filled with indescribable thoughts. The fictional descriptions intertwined repeatedly in my mind with the few times of ultimate pleasure in reality, gradually turning into an indescribable impulse. I downed several glasses of wine in succession and stood up. Feeling the surge of intoxication, I steadied myself, leaning on the table. "You all continue celebrating. I'm heading home. The boss is drunk. Xiao Qi. Please see her off." The words "no need" were on the tip of my tongue, but before I could say them, Ryan had already stood up. "Let's go." Chapter 23. The elevator ascended all the way to the top floor, stopping at the 46th floor. "I'll leave it here. You can go back and continue celebrating with them." After saying this, I turned my head somewhat sluggishly and unlocked the door. Just as I was about to enter, my wrist was suddenly grabbed and pulled forcefully into an embrace, pushing me into the room. I stumbled, and together with Ryan, we fell onto the sofa. The room was unlit, enveloped in darkness, but the myriad lights from the floor-to-ceiling windows outside just illuminated the contours of his features in the darkness. Why isn't Clara saying anything? Ryan spoke near my lips. You're so smart. Haven't you already guessed? Guessed what? Guessed that after your divorce from that foo guy was exposed by those people, all the online speculations and discussions about our relationship were guided by me. He leaned in closer, his lips almost touching mine. I was silent for a moment. Rationality slowly returned from the muddled intoxication. I did suspect it. But I don't understand your purpose in doing this. He suddenly turned over, straddling me with one leg, sitting astride my waist. From beginning to end, I had only one goal, to be with you. But you've obviously been avoiding me. That night, you said we were just a fling, not in a relationship. Then I wanted to show you that the whole world supports us being together. As he spoke, he leaned down, the distance closed, inch by inch, his cheek brushing against mine. Whether it's going along with a mistake or turning fiction into reality, I just want to like you. The more I like you, the more I despise Augustine. Even if you were only nominally married, what right did he have to possess you for 4 years? So I found a way to get him out of the picture. My fingers threaded through his soft hair, tugging slightly. The young man raised his head, his taut neck revealing a prominent Adam's apple, beautiful yet fragile. I whispered, I thought you might hate me. What if I did? After waking up, the first thought that comes to mind is still wanting to be with you. I looked into some of your past. I know that for you to stand before me now, you've gone through countless hardships. He cupped my face, murmuring against my lips. Clara, there aren't many people in this world as strong and determined as you. I'm also very glad that when you acted on your attraction back then, you chose me. It doesn't matter if there's no title. It doesn't matter if you only have desire for me and no love. His kisses trailed down along the lines of my body, leaving a trail of intermittent moisture that reflected the moonlight. Everything flowed in this night, illuminated only by faint light. Ambiguously just right. Even that hidden streak of madness in his bones became less concealed, like two carriages connected on a track. Ryan held me as we stumbled toward the window, leaning against the glass, looking at the moon. Clara, hold on tight. After a lingering, moist kiss ended, my gaze, filled with drunkenness and desire, fell outside the window, at the height of the 46th floor. It felt close enough to touch the moon and to take in the entire city's scenery and lights. In the gradually drifting thoughts, countless past fragments flashed through my mind. That pink light that had been shining for many years. The glimpses of obscene scenes occasionally seen through the swaying curtain gaps. The densely packed tenement buildings. Narrow spaces. Winter snow that couldn't melt even when spring arrived. Trampled into muddy patches. I looked up from the dark alleys, unable even to see a complete moon in the night sky. Since then, my heart had only harbored desires for power and ambition. But when did I start occasionally remembering Ryan's always sincere and passionate gaze when he looked at me? A huge wave suddenly crashed against the rocks, scattering into a spray of white foam. The emptiness in my heart was suddenly filled with burning heat. I grasped Ryan's shoulders, gasping sharply, my vision blurred by falling tears. He gazed at me, lifting his hand to tuck my sweat-dampened, disheveled hair behind my ear. In a hoarse voice, he spoke. Spring is about to pass. Clara, now, I'm giving you my heart, and your heart can remain forever free.